How we doing, guys? Welcome to FAQ 6. Things are looking up, the sun's shining, we're nearly out of lockdown. I can have all you wonderful people back in at the HQ. FAQ 6, now this question I do get asked all the time. There's no other way to phrase it. People will say to me, who's the worst band you've ever had in? Or on the other side of things, they'll say, am I the worst act you've ever had in the studio? Now, I would explain something, right? There's no such thing as worst. I don't believe in that at all. I believe in there's less experience, there's less practiced, but there's no such thing as the worst. I mean, just as an example, if I get someone that's only been at the start of their career, shall we say, and maybe it takes a bit longer to get to the results we're looking for, but the results are not hugely different from someone who has spent a great deal of time practicing. And that, as many real musicians will squirm at the thought of, is down to editing. Okay, digital editing is a real specialist area of mine. I've shown you in weeks previous how we can manipulate vocals and tune them, etc. You know, a lot of work goes into these tracks to make them release quality, okay, and that's really at any level. But if you're starting out, then yeah, it will take longer to get there, okay, but how well prepared you are, as I always say, will affect how long the session runs for. And there's a couple of things that people always reference when they come in the studio. People will talk about how the Beatles recorded an album in a day. Oh, the Beatles could record an album in a day. Well, listen, the Beatles recorded an album in a day because they were playing 6 hours plus a night in Hamburg and playing about 300 gigs a year for a long time. So that's really what I'm saying. The whole experience, the whole practice thing, all comes into that. But there's not really the gigs around to support that kind of intensity. So things like digital editing and whatnot are much more important these days because people aren't as experienced because there isn't that scene. Also, people would talk about punk music and say, oh, you know, these guys couldn't play their instruments. If you listen to the Sex Pistols' Nevermind the Bollocks album, then that, to me, I mean, I've heard people say, no, the Sex Pistols couldn't play their instruments, with the exception of Sid Vicious. Yeah, when I listen to that album, it always confused me because I always thought it sounded really tight, and I still do, and it's a very tight sounding album. The idea that these guys couldn't play their instruments and just wandered in a studio one day and just churned out one of the most influential albums of all time is a nonsense. It was all heavily practiced. So the idea, who is the worst musician? No such thing, like I say, as who is the most practiced, okay? You never hear a busker with a bad voice, I always think. Oh, well, maybe a couple of them have heard. But yeah, most buskers have great voices because they use them all the time. They are rehearsing with them, if you like, live rehearsal. You know, and the more gigs you play, the better you will be in the studio as well. So when we can all get back to gigging, get out and do gigs. If you're a solo act, do lots of open mics. Anything that gets you singing in front of people really sharpens the toolkit. And that is what makes great recordings, okay? So, if you want your recordings recorded to the best of their ability and the best version of you, then come to the HQ Glasgow and I will see you in FAQ 7.